Hello book lovers, my name is Carrie and this is Spines and Spoilers. Usually I would start by discussing what I am drinking and what I am reading, but I actually just finished a big cup of water and finished listening to the audiobook for The Angel at Indian Lake. So, you know, nothing to report right now. Today though, I would like to discuss my reading wrap-up for August of 2024. This month I read 18 books, bringing my total books for the year to 57. My goal is 75, so I have theoretically 18 books left to read if I want to meet my goal for 2024. As for the actual books that I read, the first one was Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. Middle of the Night is very Riley Sager. It is a mystery that tries to be supernatural at times. It is about two boys. One goes missing during the middle of their camping trip. Well, they're camping in the middle of one of their backyards. But one of them goes missing and there's a slit in the tent where a knife has gone through. And the one who isn't taken, he grows up and he feels all this guilt about not stopping what happened, and not being able to remember what happened. Like, he was asleep at the time. And yeah, just trying to figure out what exactly happened, if he had anything to do with it, and who was involved. Weird stuff also starts happening, and he starts thinking there's a chance that his friend might somehow still be alive. As far as Riley Sager books go, I did enjoy this one, but it wasn't as ridiculous as some of his other stuff. It leaned a little more to the serious side of things for the most part. There were some parts where he got lost in the weeds, and the ending was a little disappointing, I'm not gonna lie. The next book that I read was Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward. This was a reimagining of American slavery. It's about a woman who is unfortunately born through rape. Her mother was raped by her slave driver, and then she is sold. And it is about her survival, her journey, and ultimately her rebirth. This book might as well be one long poem. I'm trying not to cry right now because it was so beautifully written. Her use of imagery and metaphor are pretty much unparalleled. I think it's worth reading for the writing alone. That being said, it is not a light-hearted story. It's extremely dark, and you should go in knowing that if you plan to read it. The next book that I read was Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. It's basically an indictment of the way that true crime is treated and the fact that these murderers are revered. No one remembers the victims, but the murderers are always remembered, and they end up with kind of fan clubs. And it's sort of an indictment on that. It is fiction, and I enjoyed it, but I think it does a great job of hammering that point home. Also, sorry again for the shaky cam. I don't have my equipment today because I'm doing a house-sitting job for one of my friends. Well, two of my friends, technically. The fourth book that I read in August was One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. This was her most recent book. It was just put out. It is about a couple who ends up on a reality show of sorts. They end up stranded on an island when this big storm goes through. Apparently a lot of people didn't like it, but I did. I was unhappy with a couple of things from the ending, but I really enjoyed the unreliable narrator aspect of it, and the fact that it kind of kept you guessing in some parts. I'm not going to say that none of it was predictable or anything like that, but it does make you wonder about the unreliable narrator, if nothing else. The fifth book that I read in August is The Stranger Upstairs by Lisa M. Matten, I believe is how you pronounce her name. This was about a woman who bought a house with the purpose of refurbishing it and reselling it, but it is a murder house, like violent murder. And slowly over time, she kind of starts losing her mind. She thinks that she hears people moving around upstairs. She starts seeing all these things and losing time. I thought that the ending of this one was interesting. You know, I liked the way that it went. I do feel like it was a little unfinished, in a way, but still, like, enjoyed how it wrapped things up. I'm not making any sense at all. I like what the reason was for why everything happened the way that it did, but feel like it could have been wrapped up in a better way. That's what I'm trying to say. Number 6 was Vampires del Norte by Isabel Cañas. I have been trying to read this book for a couple of years now, and I'm glad that I finally did. Basically, at the beginning of the book, there is a couple. The man thinks that a woman has been killed by a vampire. He runs away. She survived, though, so in her mind, she's like, what the hell? You just abandoned me to this vampire. How uncool. But the actual book itself, they end up reconnecting later, and the book itself ends up being more of a romance, in my opinion, than anything else, but it's kind of a gothic romance, and there's still, vampiric elements, and I enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it. It can be a little slow in parts, though, just a heads up. Number 7 was Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. This was about 3 women disappearing on the same night or around the same time period, and one of them showing up years and years later, like 30 years later, I think. It's a long time period, at any rate. And everyone trying to figure out what exactly happened, because she's been in a basement this entire time, can't really explain what happened that night. I liked elements of this. I thought some of it was strong, but I feel like it wandered a little bit in some places and didn't emphasize certain aspects that it should have. It's not her strongest work, I'm not gonna lie. I did like it, but I don't know if I would reread it. Number 8 was Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. I think this is one of my new favorites. The way that it's advertised basically indicates that it's a horror that takes place at a conversion camp, which isn't accurate. It does involve a conversion camp, and they do go there at one point. That's not the central setting of the story. So the main character is basically part of a cult. It is a Christian religion that is extremely controlling, like a branch of the Christian religion that's extremely controlling. Have some experience with this, like personal experience with that, and kind of controls every aspect of her life. She thinks that she's really happy with it, though, and is really involved with the community, until one day she starts to think that she's having feelings for another girl. She starts experiencing these really negative things, like thinking that there are demons following her, basically, and just really weird stuff. And I won't give away the plot, but I will say that there is a conversion camp involved. They claim that they have a 100% retention rating, that no one, relapses and becomes gay again, because, that's totally, you can totally cure the gay. She realizes over time that she is missing memories, and that the people around her are not entirely telling the truth. It's fun, it's creepy, some of it's kind of gory and weird. No, it's pretty gory. I'm not gonna lie, there are parts where it's pretty gory. I really enjoyed it, though, and so far I am enjoying Chuck Tingle's foray into horror in general. Number 9 was Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. It was a little bit of a palate cleanser. It was nowhere near as dark and severe and gory as Camp Damascus. Parts of it were very cozy. It was a fantasy. It circulates around the half-orc from Legends and Lattes and functions as a prequel of sorts. If you liked Legends and Lattes and enjoy that overall vibe of, cozy fantasy adventure type thing with a little bit of queer romance tossed in, would recommend it. I liked this better than Legends of Lattes, probably. The 10th book that I read was The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This was not part of the Inheritance trilogy, but it did circulate around the same characters, but this time from the point of view of the brothers, particularly Grayson and Jameson. I thought there was too much going on at times, especially with Grayson, But overall, I did enjoy the storyline. Originally I thought it was a prequel, and it is not. It happens after the events of the Inheritance game series. And there's another one coming out that I'm planning on reading called The Grandest Game. I just got the audiobook for it, and that's how I'm about to start by September. Number 11 was Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. Who, this book? There was some interesting stuff in this book, let me tell you. It does not go in a direction that you expect it to go, and I kinda loved it. I'm not gonna lie. I had this on my TBR for a long time, because people had recommended it to me. And I know that it has very mixed reviews, but it gets very dark and twisted, and I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I'm not gonna lie. I know that's probably going to dock me credibility points, but whatever. It gets so dark and so twisted and weird, and yeah. I like it. I like that it didn't just go... It didn't play it safe in a lot of places, which I approve of. Number 12 was Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulet. It is set on a reservation, I believe, in Canada. It's at least up north, because it's got those vibes. But it is about a reservation where individuals have started dying of meth overdoses. And they want an individual whose uncle just died from that to help them kind of infiltrate and help them figure out what's going on, because she is technically a teenager, but she's also a very gifted chemist. One of the agents has gone undercover and is pretending to be her boyfriend, trying to basically infiltrate whatever is going on and figure out where the meth is coming from, why people are dying, all this stuff. This wasn't quite what I expected, but I did enjoy the ride. I kind of wish it was longer and that some aspects of it had been explored a little bit more, you know? Like, there were some parts where it felt like it was a little wandering and maybe like we weren't focusing on the more interesting elements as much as we could have been. But yeah, overall, totally get the hype. Number 13 was Hide by Kiersten White. In this book, 14 people are brought to an amusement park where they're told that they will need to hide basically each day and keep from being caught. Every day 2 people are found and eliminated. I don't know what happens if they don't find those 2 people, allegedly, but they quickly figure out this isn't quite what it seems and that people are actually dying. They just don't know how or why or who is killing them. So yeah, this one had so much potential, and I did like a lot of it. It felt, the ending felt a little abrupt to me. Like, I wanted more out of it. Like, it felt like there was more meat on those bones. Like, there should have been more meat on those bones. But that's me. Maybe I'm too needy. Either way, it was interesting and enjoyable, and I thought the flashbacks were interesting. I don't know. It's one of those where it's like, would I read it again? Maybe. I don't know. It's not in the 4.5 or 5-star range. Maybe like a 3.5 or a 4. More likely a 3.5. Number 14 is kind of one I don't want to talk about. It's The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I'm so sorry. This is the 3rd Lucy Foley book that I have tried to read, and I have not enjoyed any of them. She doesn't know how to focus. She's all over the place with the plot, with the people. There are too many freaking points of view. It's the same issue every time, because she has really interesting ideas and plot points. Like, there's a lot of potential in these stories, but then she's just like, she all over the place. All over the place. And it just makes it so it's not enjoyable to read. I understand that's just a matter of personal preference, though. But if you don't like alternating perspectives, and plot points, just go freaking everywhere. Just maybe avoid it. I got through that with Game of Thrones barely. and I would skip some perspectives. I'm not gonna lie. Whenever we got into like the third and fourth book in that series, I've just started skipping some perspective because I was like, nothing is happening here, and this character is not enjoyable to read. I'll figure it out later. Someone else is gonna explain this from their perspective, which is much more enjoyable to read. 2.5 stars, and yeah, I'm not gonna try to read Lucy Foley anymore. I'm sorry to the people who love her. I just really don't. I'm not talking about the person. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but I just really don't enjoy her writing. I want to, I just don't. Number 15 was The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. I'm not gonna lie, I only read this because it was Rachel Hawkins, because I don't generally like books that circulate around like celebrities or people who are notorious or stuff like that. It's boring to me, especially if it's like a fake celebrity. Like, I don't know, there's something about it that I'm not super interested in. I don't want to have to learn the lore for this fake celebrity, especially since I'm not super interested in real celebrities. But it worked in this case because she was notorious for, one, going missing as a child, and two, all of her husbands dying one by one. So yeah, that made it much more interesting. That's one of the perspectives that we follow. We also follow the perspective of the man who inherits her mansion when she dies and all of her money, and his wife, which initially seems odd, but then you kind of figure out why later on. This was an example of not having too many perspectives, and there actually being a function to the altering perspectives. And all of them are relatively enjoyable to read. I thought that it was just the right amount of cruel in some places, and had a really satisfying ending. You know, the people got what they deserved. I'll put it that way. Number 16 was The End of Her by Shari Lapena. I'm gonna be honest, I had to look this one up because I didn't remember everything that happened in this one, and that should say something because I read it like a week ago. My memory also sucks, but I don't know, I just feel like that says something. Basically, it is about a couple, Stephanie and Patrick, and one day a woman named Erica shows up and accuses Patrick of killing his wife a decade ago, I believe. It's been years at this point, but she wants to blackmail them, basically saying that he killed his wife and he got away with it. But I think the main question here is, did he do it? And if he did, is he going to try and kill her? What's she gonna do about it? I liked the way that the character Stephanie ended up handling things, and I think that Erica was a decent enough villain. I didn't think that there needed to be other things going on the side, on the side, you know, like there were too many other things going on. They needed maybe like one more of the subplots. I guess they're just solidifying that Erica's just like this terrible person and she's blackmailing like multiple couples, but I don't know. Some of it doesn't feel relevant to the plot. Not terrible, but not super memorable. Probably like a 3.5. It's not something that I would actively deter anyone from reading. If you like Shari Lapena, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Shari Lapena. But if you like her work, or like Mary Kubica, that kind of thing, have at it. You will probably like it. For me, she's a little hit or miss, and her stuff tends to be slightly forgettable. Nothing against her as a person. I think that genre can be a little bit repetitive at times and a little bit predictable. There was part of it that I didn't necessarily see coming, and I did find really enjoyable and satisfying. But otherwise, I would say read it and skip over the extraneous chapters if you can, because it'll all come to light anyway. Number 17 is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. And this one, basically, the world has ended and there's this island of people who has been able to survive, and they have a completely peaceful society until one day one person, well, not just one person, several people turn up dead, but one of them seems to have been murdered. So now they have to figure out who did it, why, how can they stop them. All of this being a society that's not violent, knows nothing about solving crime. The only thing that they know about solving crime is from the one girl, one girl reading Sherlock Holmes novels because she was given them by one of the scientists who died. They can't help. They're dead. I really liked this one, and I think it has the potential to be like a modern classic of sorts. But I do think that it does kind of suffer from going a little all over the place at times, and it wanders. Like, it goes on a little too long. There are too many circumstances where it's like, this person must be the killer because blah blah blah. It's like, okay, yeah, makes sense. I can see how you got there. And then it bumps to another person. It's like, no, it must be this person because blah. It's like, that one seems like a weaker reason, but okay. And it just, that happens a lot. Way too many times, you know, till you're at the end and you're like, is this actually the ending? Is this actually what happened? Or is this another false ending? You know, but overall, it was enjoyable to read. I enjoyed the world building, and the characters. I just thought that it went on too long, and like he had a lot of ideas for who could have done it, maybe, and why, and he just wanted to put all of them in there rather than picking the strongest ones and keeping them. I just realized that I left one of the books that I read off my list, so I'm gonna list that one next. I read it between Hyde and Firekeeper's Daughter. It's Missing White Woman by Kelly Garrett. The reason I forgot to put it on there is because it was forgettable, I'm pretty sure. Basically, a woman goes on a trip with her boyfriend, and while she's there, he ends up disappearing, and a woman ends up in her, like, Airbnb type thing, dead, murdered. And of course, you know, she's the primary suspect because he's missing, and she's the only person there, and she's a black woman, so she has to rely on her friend who's a lawyer. I'm not gonna say it was a weak story necessarily, but I did think that there was a lot more they could have done to strengthen the bones, if that makes any sense. Not bad, but definitely not one of the best that I've read this year. The 19th and final book that I read this month, and also my favorite book that I read this month, was The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. I love Stephen Graham Jones, absolutely, and I love this trilogy. I believe it is actually called the Indian Lake Trilogy, and it follows the main character Jade, who is obsessed with serial killers and like slashers and all that stuff, slashers in particular, and she just kind of sees it everywhere around her. Very neurodivergent. Yeah. She is also Native American and repeatedly says that she thinks of herself as a bad Native American, because she isn't actually able to be part of a tribe, essentially. So she feels very isolated, both because of her heritage and her lack of a people, and also because she's just, you know, she's the weird kid who's obsessed with slashers and uses that for her, like, school projects and stuff like that. She is the weird kid, and I love her for it, because she's like a legitimate weird neurodivergent kid, you know. Not Bella Swan weird kid. Sorry, Stephanie Myers, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about actual weird kid energy. And yeah, I have loved every single one of these books, from My Heart is a Chainsaw, Don't Fear the Reaper, and now The Angel of Indian Lake. I think that they are absolutely wild, and they explore horror concepts that other people wouldn't think to touch on. And yeah, if you are a horror fan, like, in particular, I think that you will like these books. It's kind of a love letter to people who love horror. Slashers in particular. Like, there are other forms of horror mentioned and referenced a lot, but especially slasher. But that is the end of my wrap up for August 2024. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate it way more than you know. I don't care how many times I say it, I mean it every single freaking time. I appreciate it. I hope you guys are staying safe out there, staying cool if you're somewhere where it's summer right now, though it's starting to cool down and I'm so happy about it. You can like and share and subscribe and all that stuff if you want to, if you feel it in your heart that you must. But most importantly, I would like you to remember to love yourself, please. Especially with like all the stuff that's coming up, all the holidays and crap, just please remember to love yourself too. Please. Okay, bye. If I say